Hi, today we're going to talk about testing basics. Today we're going to use minitest. And there are many test frameworks out there, and it's really above and beyond the scope of this screencast to talk about which one you're going to use and why. Are you going to use TDD? Are you going to use BDD? Are you going to use the test unit style? Or are you going to use spec style? All of those are decisions that you will need to make. However, we're going to set you up with minitests so you can do either of those styles. And this is just a slight basic extension to the default testing that comes with Rails and Rails4. All right, let's dig in here. Well, before I get started, I guess I need a little bit of prep there. First off, I would encourage you to take a look at Rails guides. There's quite a few details here and examples that will further what I'm going to show you here. And second, we're going to look at minitest. We're going to use minitest. And so this is there are a couple of examples here on the GitHub page. Feel free to run through those as well. And lastly, we're going to use minitest-rails, the minitest-rails gem, and this kind of further integrates, and especially when you want to go on and do things with Capybara, you can add that with another gem on top of this, and everything just works, which is why we're going to use it here today. So, to get started, we're going to look at how we configure this. First off, we're going to create a new app, but we're going to skip the test unit. You'll do this on any testing framework that you want to replace the defaults with, and we're just doing a slight replacement, not very big. So Rails new, testing, and install that. And nope, not migrations, testing basics. Okay, let's open another one here. And I'm going to use Vim, but you can use whatever you like. And now let's drop into our gem file here. As you'll see, we need to add minitest-rails. I like to add this near the bottom, and we're going to add it also in a group because we only need this in development and test. Do gem minitest rails. Now you can stop here, but at the time of this writing there are a couple things that I want to include that are still on master. So we're going to do git that. I can't remember. We'll just paste that right in there. Yes, .git. Okay. Bundle is going to update from there. Perfect. Okay, so now we have it installed, and if you list your directories, you're going to see there is no test directory yet. What we need to do in order to get that is we need to install this, and we use a generator to do that. Rails G mini test install. Boom. All right. So let's see here. I am going to do two examples with scaffolding just to demonstrate a couple things and a couple fallback things for you. And then after that, we're going to actually do a little bit of TDD and drive out a model and a couple actions on a controller. So, in order to, one moment. All right, so the first example. Actually, we're going to do a scaffold. And we're going to do widgets, a widget, and name string. Okay, so the reason why we're doing this is to show you all of the default that is generated for both controllers and models. Now, if we jump over here and we go to, well, you've seen all of the default CRUD stuff. Let's look at the tests. Okay, so test models, widget test. Okay, so it does a setup block and it asserts that it's valid. That's what you get by default. And in the widgets controller, you get tests for all of the happy paths of all of the actions, the default actions. So if you ever want to know how to do something or what a few of the basics are, the places you can look are just generate a little application and run a generator, or you can certainly run down here and take a look at the code in here, and this will give you a good idea of what you need to do. So that is one way to see what's going on here. The other thing that we can do, as I mentioned, there are two styles. BDD, behavior-driven development, uses a different set of lingo, and so if we want to see that, let's do the same thing here, except we'll just do a scaffold for item spec, and if we pass the spec here, it'll generate an entirely different set of helpers. And this is the nice thing about minitest, is that you can use both styles in one project, which would be helpful if you're converting from one to another, or for a variety of reasons. All right, so if we look at test and items, now we can see a different set, a different way of looking at tests here. And if we split these pages and we look at the widgets test, granted it's going to be different code in here, because it's a different resource. You can see the same basics. We're calling the items method here. We call the widgets method, which fetches items out of fixtures. We use a describe instead of a class. We use an it method instead of a def method, and so on and so forth. also, if you look under the widget test and test models item, you can also see more of the syntax. Again, the let block up here, which defines an instance method that you can call item, and it initializes it once. You can also use the expectation methods in here. And the nice thing about minitest is that there is a one-for-one matching of the expectation methods and to the assertions, which we see like this assertion right over here. And that makes it very convenient, very understandable. RSpec calls them matchers, and RSpec is its own thing entirely. So we're going to stick here with minitest, and we're also going to stick with the standard assertion tests for this next part of the demo. So if you are interested in either one of those, you can compare and contrast them and use what makes sense. I certainly have a standpoint that I enjoy the regular test unit style tests, but it's certainly up to you and what is valid for you and your organization. All right, so let's close that out, and now let's get started here. So we're going to flush out a category model, and we're also going to flush out a categories controller for the new and create action. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to generate our controller. Or not our controller, we're going to start with the model here today. Rails G model, and we are going to use category and name string. Very simple for this first go. And as you can see, it created migration, it created the model, and it also created the test as well as a fixture for us. I should say there's a variety of philosophies on fixtures. There are also different builders that you can use. Fixtures certainly handle it just fine. Some people think they're tedious. I find they're all quite tedious, so it really is just how you want to slice it. And I'll leave that to a later screencast or for your own exercise to figure out which one you like. We're going to use the default fixtures right now. Alright, so let's look at what was generated here for us. Model category. Okay, we just have our plain category, and then test models category. Okay, so if we run this, we can rake minitest. Oh, we haven't migrated, so let's run TDE migrate and see what happens. Okay. Minitest, and it ran all of our mini tests up, and we've got some errors here. I am going to clear out a couple things. Rails, just because we're getting some excess errors here that I don't want to clean up in the sake of the example. So widgets, or widget. Geez. Now let's see what we get here. Okay, we have one test now, which is exactly what we want. All right, looking at our test here, we have the one test. Is it valid or not? Now we can go ahead, and since we want to do everything with TDE Test first, we're going to add a new method, test invalid without name. And then we write the code in here in order to test it. We already have a category because setup runs before each and every test. And we just say, not that, we just say name equals nil. And then we do a cert category dot valid. And instead of assert, we want to do refute, because refute is the opposite of assert. So now we can run over here and do rake minitest. And now we get a failure. Invalid without name. No method given, or no message given. Alright, let's bounce over here. And well, the reason why is because we wanted to do test-driven development. We wrote the test first. We always want to see the test fail to make sure we have a test that actually tests something. So let's do validate name, or let's see here, name presence true. And now let's run it again. If we want to run just the models or any section of tests, we can also just run rake models, which is going to do the same thing since we only have model tests here. And now it still says invalid without name. It failed on line 15. Look at line 15, and it's still not valid. Well, this test is actually doing something for us here, because even though we added the validation here, we did it incorrectly. Now, when we run minitest models, we get it. It looks like it failed, but look, it's a different thing. Category test, test valid, valid failed. Well, let's look. Line 10, it failed. Why? Because category is invalid, because it does indeed need a name. So name home. And now rake minitest models, and we get 2 passing tests. So we just hammered that out with test-driven development. Now, this is getting kind of obnoxious, going back and forth in between the different files. So we can do gem install ZenTest. There we are, and now we have a new tool that we can use. And we can do autotest. This this ships with minitest-rails, and it just ran all of our tests. But the interesting thing is that when we go back here and we say def test invalid, long name, we're going to check to make sure it's a certain length. You could rename that to make it a little bit more clear. If we just want category A, refute, that, and look, now it ran immediately when I saved the file. Pretty cool, huh? So now we can go over here. Now we know that it's ready to go, and without having to switch and run another command, we can add this right away. Length, bounce down here, length, and minimum, and we need at least 3 characters in there. And one thing that I do want to say is that it will, it'll help all over the place, because it'll help just not with passing tests. We can go up here and see, oh look, there's a syntax error. And now let's see here. Check validity, range, and specify. And if we look at validates and length, maximum, should be correct, unless I misspelled something here. Oh, specify within, maximum, minimum. Oops. And when you hit Control C, it'll restart it, rerun everything. So let's see if I misspelled something here. And there we go. I must have misspelled it. So anyways, that again, you can see it really helps to have this for small things like this. And now we're done with our model example here for now. So now let's bounce back over here and do Rails G controller ignore categories. Now it creates the category test, and I'm going to immediately restart ZenTest here because it will not pick up. And one thing to note here is that it does create tests for helpers. We don't need those helpers right now. Generally, we'll delete that for now, and we'll generate it, but we'll say no helper. And then that way, it won't generate. Start that to pick up the new changes. Okay, so Now let's check. Now we're getting need a real test. So let's look at categories test. Okay, here's our categories controller. Let's make this a little bit bigger just because I'm using large text here. Test controllers, categories controller. So this demonstrates that you can also use the test word here to create a test, and you can also use flunk and pass it a message if you want something to automatically fail. We're going to do def test new, and what we're going to do in here is we want to, first we need to tell it to do something so we can actually have behavior to test. We get new. We pass in the action that we want to test here, and then we want to say assert success. There we are. Watch the test run, and it fails. No route matches categories new. We know what to do there. Only, I'm going to show you a new array syntax here. New. And you'll see why we're doing that here in a moment. Save that. Runs. The new action cannot be found. Well, what do you guess we're going to do? Def new. Now let's run it again. And now we're getting a missing template error. So let's oh, no, we're not going in there. We're looking for app, views, categories, new.html.erb, and save that. Picks up the file. Okay, now it works. But usually I run with the test over here, and over here I run with my code that I'm actually testing. So we want to actually flush out that this has a form on it. And there are a couple ways, and one way that I want to show you here is assert. We can actually test you can actually test the views, and in this view testing section here you'll see that we can assert select. So we can we should be able to do assert, and we want to make sure it has a form element on the page, and this should fail, and expect at least one element matching form. And there is a whole section on passing selectors in here, and you'll need to do that specific for your project, so I won't go into that. So but now we have a failing test, so now we need to do a form. So let's go over to here to our form here, and form for category do F alright, now we have a category here. And you could drill this down further. You could write many more assert select statements in here, but we're going to build out our form. Over testing depends on, over and under testing, the thresholds for those depend on your project and depend on the philosophy of your group. But this right now is here just to show you what you can do. So let's we can check to make sure we have a submit tag, and you can nest these things and do all those sorts of things. But now it looks like we have another error here. New on line 1 has an error. First argument cannot be nil. Category appears to be null. And so we can go up here, category equals category dot new. Run that. And now we have undefined method categories path. And that's because it needs to post somewhere. So routes create. And now it passes. So let's continue building out our form. You could continue to do this and testing each step along the way. Label name name. If we misspell name, of course, here, it will pick up on that. It'll tell us name X is an undefined method. Run that, and it passes. And now we have our form here. So now we need to def test create. And that'll run and it'll pass, but there's nothing in there. We want to do, we use this helper method post create, and we want to pass name make sure I spell that right there. We want to write the code that'll actually do something there. Let's do that. And post create. And the create action cannot be found. Categories controller. Create. And now we get a error for no template. But that's not what we want to do at the end of create. Cert redirected to. We want to go back in our case to the index, so we're going to say categories URL. And that's not quite. Cert redirected categories URL. And again, we get the error, and that is because we need to, it's still trying to by default render that, and it's coming up with an error before the test actually fails. So let's redirect to categories URL. Do that, and now we get our passing test here. Okay, and then, but that, I'm pretty sure that that didn't create anything, so we actually need to test for that too. Cert difference category count do we get it expected 3, but we actually got 2. That's because we didn't create anything. So and we're going to create there's a whole ton of steps in here that I could or could not do. It's always, again, good to make sure that everything is failing first. I'm going to take a couple liberties here, though. And again, now I'm going to do something that looks different here from what you're used to. There. And that passes because it does everything that we want it to do. Minus that we want it to do a flash message here, and so then we could go over here. We could do assert equal what we want it to be. And then there's a flash that you have access to. Just like that. And let me show you here. If you functional tests here for hashes, you also have access to the flash, the session, the cookies, and assigns or instance variables that are assigned. You also have access to some instance variables as well. So now that we know that it came up nil, we can add it. Flash notice equals refresh that, and we're good. So now we have a problem though, because if this fails, it's certainly not going to fail. So if we do test create fail, we can do assert then we want to, but we want to do something that is invalid, so we do that, assert no difference, but and it did not save there, but that's not everything we want to do here. And one moment. Sorry for the interruption there. That's part of the deal with these unscripted things. All right, so here we want to, that passed, but we again want to make sure that we only write the code that we have a test for. So we want to do instead assert redirected, or assert template and we want to make sure that it's rendered with the new template. And that fails. So if we can't just, of course, just do render new here, we do that, then we get a double action or a double render error, and that's no good. So we actually need to add in the appropriate constructs now here. And there we go. And now for the real test, and under, all right, Rails S for a server here. Open this up, do localhost 3000, there's our application, and dot there we are. Create our category. Garden, create our category. No route matches get categories. So here we are, we have a new thing to test for because we redirected to categories URL, but we don't have a method for that. So let's do def test index. And then we want to do similar to what we did up here. We just want to get it, and we want to assert the response as a success. Get index success. And what do we get? No route. Index. Okay. And that passed, but no index action. And then, so categories controller, index, and no view, app views categories index.html.erb, and there we are. We have an error, undefined method each for nil. That's because categories is nil. Controller. And now it passes. And now we should refresh. And now we are on our categories page. And if we go to new home create garden, and we don't see the flash, and I'll leave that as an exercise to you to make sure that the flash is displayed on the page. There you go. That's a basic walkthrough on test-driven development. Behavior-driven development is very similar, but I'll let you go through that or do that in a future screencast. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.